Everyone. I am here in this session, in this conversation with Sebastian Sim, actor, presenter, radio presenter, voiceover, and lecturer. Wow, that sounds so cool.
Yeah, I think it's a transition, right? Once you're done in the media and all that, and you want to pass things down and just try to inspire the next generation. I know it sounds very cliched, but I think that's how it is. I think that was my main motivation. I think after a while, I was in the media for at least a good 20 plus years. To be honest, it kind of like I lost the sense of purpose. I wasn't looking forward every morning, getting out of bed. That whole energy to face the day just wasn't there anymore. It kind of felt like a drag. So the next thing was I remember when I was at Power 98 and we had to do these what they call school invasions. And I always enjoyed interacting with the youths and sharing with them what I knew, what I learned. So I thought that it would be a natural progression to go over into that and try to rekindle some sense of purpose. And it did. Going into lecturing itself, I think it was a win-win because it seems like I'm out of the industry, but actually still very much in because you're teaching exactly the same things that you were doing back then. So the plus point is I still get to carry on with my passion for radio, for the media, but doing it in a more meaningful way now, inspiring the next generation and just sharing your experiences and hopefully it impacts somebody and maybe they will choose the same path as I did.
I remember being able to do like a guest lecturer spot in Singapore two or three times when I was with MTV, and it just felt so fulfilling to be able to just to see things in a younger generation's perspective and eyes, and being able to kind of give them notes as to what you've learned. And there was just like there's like a different type of energy there because they're going to be the future and they're going to be the generations ahead. And I think part of who we are and where we are is constantly having to adapt too. So I think when you crossing over there, crossing in being a lecturer, you're probably immersed in seeing things in different ways. It's probably different for me because I'm going in as a guest. So I go in and I come out, but then you're there. So you see the
Yeah,
process, like how they think, how like the
yeah,
students think.
yeah. I think the first thing, of course, is learning all the lingo. I think that really keeps me young. And realizing their thought process, the way they view things, their perceptions, and all. It's very interesting because it's generations apart. I mean, the way we deal with things, even challenges or even good things as well. The way they see it is so interesting. It's so different, and you start appreciating different viewpoints. I guess when we're inside the media industry, we're surrounded by people who are roughly about the same way of thinking. We do deal with different kinds of audiences and all that, but it's within the same generation somewhat. But when you are there in lecturing in a classroom, in a lecture theater, it's different because you are now, I guess, more involved with them, with their growth. And you're absolutely right. You're so immersed in their so-called like upbringing in that sense, and you see the change in them as you impart experiences and lessons to them, and you see them learn and they grow from it. Um, like all those advertisements they have where they talk about how fulfilling teaching is. It's all very cliche and we laugh at it, but it's really true. It's really I've experienced lots of hallmark moments where you just see the student perform and perform well because of what you've taught the person. And I think that is probably one of the most rewarding things that we've done.
um Singapore is rated like really high in terms of the standard of the education system, in terms of how educators are paid, their salary. Do you feel like from an international perspective that educators are underrated in their role?
I don't know about underrated, but I do admit at times I do feel underappreciated. There are a lot of
Underappreciated.
yeah, there are a lot of stakeholders there, and I think it's a special breed of people that goes into teaching that can do well in teaching, and it's not easy at all. And without discussing our remuneration and all, but I don't think it's comparable to like maybe the corporate world, for instance. So essentially, teachers are doing it for a different reason. You're definitely not in it for the money. Yeah, you're not going to be a millionaire or start running your own company doing teaching. So we do it for a different reason. And I think most of us, if not all, are doing it because we know the importance of it and we know the impact we would have on a young mind, and it's kind of like paying it forward. So I do feel that sometimes intentions get misread, or people sometimes take it for granted, where they just assume that, yeah, that's what you have to do. Uh, while a teacher, there are certain things that, yes, we do, but more often than not, we find ourselves going above and beyond the call of duty because we are genuinely invested in the child's well-being, and we genuinely want to see the child do well. And just doing the basic like roles and responsibilities just of a teacher itself, that alone is not enough. You have to put in a bit more because it's about connecting to an individual. It's about building that rapport, that bond, such that you can continually engage the person, to keep an open mind and to learn as well. So those are not easy, and you can't do it just going like the basic requirements of a teacher. It has to be more than that. And a lot of people don't realize that. A lot of people just think that, it's just like that. All you have to do is just go through a syllabus and just go through in class and just mark papers. But yeah, it's not the case at all.
It's very psychological because you're not dealing with just one person when you're going into work. You're dealing with a pool of students. So each individual has a different perception of what they're receiving from you and
Yeah,
how, yeah.
yeah, that's the greatest challenge because you go to a classroom, you ask about like 20 22 people, and everybody's going to react to you differently, like what we all know. You can't get everybody to love you, but that's not what we want. We want them to be able to learn, to be engaged in the lesson itself. So in a simple like 1 2 hour lesson, you are continually having to adapt and adopt different approaches for individual students because everybody is going to respond differently, and yet make sure that everybody is able to move forward with what they've learned. So that is always like one of the biggest challenges, to get them to be engaged.
How do you deal with the sensitivities of society nowadays? I
Mm.
because there's a lot of sensitivities within the education system, more so than there ever has been. I think if we're looking at from a global perspective, because like in Western societies over in the US or in Europe, it's like there's certain things that you have to be tactful about, which might not have been the case generations before. Are there situations like that for you in Singapore?
Oh, yeah, yeah, definitely. I think one of the key things is to always, I would say, keep up with the trends, especially what matters to youths these days. Uh, so we keep up to date, whether is it on social media, whatever it's going on. We listen to the kids as well to hear what matters to them. And we really, really have to be very mindful of all these sensitivities. Like what you correctly pointed out, right? In the US and in a lot of Western cultures, the whole woke culture makes us now have to be really, really careful with what we say and the way we say certain things. So we as tutors definitely have to be always mindful about that. And yeah, we really have to be very sensitive. It's not like the good old days, like how when we were in school, it's just very different, right? Yeah, but that is an added challenge, I would say, when we go into the classroom. Something else that we have to be mindful about.
Do you feel that we're in a generation that's too sensitive?
Hmm. Personally, I think yeah. I think sometimes we just need to live and let live. I mean, I'm not encouraging anything or what, but I thought back then, when I was in school, I thought life was simpler. Really, really much simpler. I'll give you a simple example. I mean, not to stir up any racial things or anything like that, but during recess or after school, when we were to play football, and all the kids will come down to the football field and we'll divide up. And what's the fastest way to divide it up? Well, we can do the classic old base home and then you split your teams and all that, but that takes too much time. So if you want to get into into the game real fast, what we normally do is we just go there and we just say Chinese one team, Malay and Indian the other team, and we just play the game. I think now, if we were to suggest something like that, you straight away get labeled as a racist. Why
Yeah.
you bring up race? Why does it have to be about race? But back then, it was exactly the same thing. But we never had that intention. It was just a faster, practical way to do it. Chinese usually lost, but it doesn't matter. We stuck with it. When we were playing, we're just playing with our friends. We weren't saying that, oh, I'm playing because I want to win it for the Chinese or I want to win it for the Malay. No, nobody ever thought about that. So is it because we were less woke? I don't think so. I think that we were very well aware of the differences in our races, but I think we're just practical about it and we're not overly sensitive. And that is just one example. And I think that nowadays people, especially with social media, we're always trying to find fault with certain things, like just for the sake of doing it, just to stir up emotions or gain clout, whatever it is, on social media. I think the motivations are all wrong. And yeah, and it's driving people towards that, which I think it's not really good.
I totally agree on that. I feel that at the end of the day, it's about balance. And I think in some ways, generations before, we were more tolerant because we were less sensitive. And like as we can see, we live in cancel culture. We see how a lot of comedians are being canceled because of what they present. But back then, it's like, oh, okay, you're able to divide, you're able to separate it. Basically, okay, this is for comedic purposes, and sometimes it makes you think, like sarcasm.
Yeah, I
Oh,
totally agree. Back then, we really don't look into the nitty-gritty. It seems that now people just take offense at anything that people say, anything that doesn't go along with how they feel, maybe at that moment or on that day. They just say, "Oh, that's wrong. You're a sexist. You're ageist, or you're racist, and all that." It's exactly like what you said. It's the whole cancel culture. People just being overly sensitive. Yeah, back then we didn't care that much.
I think
Yeah.
what we can do is, for example, what you're doing is able to share your insight as a lecturer from your time with the new generation, and then maybe they're able to see things in a different way. Because the way I see it, they're not wrong because they haven't been exposed to what we have been exposed to, and they're just exposed to what they see now in this generation. And this generation is all about being who you are, comfortable in your skin. But then I think there's a layers, psychological layers to understand that it's not just on the surface, but it's much more in depth. Yeah.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. The reason why they are how they are, why they think how they think, it's because of the environment that they were brought in. And right now it is as such. And we can't really blame them because we were brought up in a different time. I mean, we were brought up at a time where there was no internet, right?
Yeah.
And there was no social media. So the whole culture, the environment is all very different. It's not really their fault that they are like that they think like that. But what we can do is to be more aware and more understanding of the ecosystem that they're being brought up in. And once we're able to better appreciate that, then we'll know how to approach certain subjects or how to interact with them. It is a learning process. There's no textbook that's going to cover it. It's we learn it sometimes through trial and error. I do have said certain things that didn't go down too well with the students, and they let me know. They said,
Mm,
"Oh, you should do that because it's," and I learned, and I was like, "Okay, now I understand." I don't fight against it. I didn't, no, that's rubbish. You can't say that. Uh, you just accept it because that's their generation, and you are in a role that's meant to, or that has to interact with them, and that has to engage them. So it's best that you know how your field of engagement is like, so that you're better able to interact with them. So it is a totally learning process, and I'm still learning.
I like that. We're still learning. You're still learning. We're all still learning. So I want to say segue this back to I noticed as we're having this conversation that I always thought it was just me who had different um a different type of voice, like when like I'm in front of the camera as a VJ, or when I'm having a conversation with friends or close friends. And then as we're having this conversation, I noticed that you have that too, because it's like
Mhm.
when I was listening to you when I was living in Singapore, it's like you have this other sort of weight to your voice as a DJ. And then and then I understand that, because having been the VJ, it's like I switch on as well. And then I realize, oh, at the end of the day, Sebastian also has like a lighter, like just normal tone voice, because I'm so used to hearing your voice in my head as a DJ. It's because it's so distinct. And yeah, I just thought that just came up. That's really interesting. So that means like you're in some ways or another, as as a voice talent, as a radio personality, you find you kind of hone how to use your voice.
Mm.
Am I
I
correct?
think, yeah, definitely. When I first started, it was I started. I was like those club DJs. I started as like an event MC, and I used that. I never knew about how to use the voice. I just spoke as it is, right? And when I got onto radio itself, and I did it the same way, and I listened back, and it was like, oh my goodness, it's really bad. It's like, why do people listen to me? Uh, I underwent training. The likes of all my seniors back then, they would share like how to better use your voice. All the thing about diaphragmatic voice. Getting the voice from the diaphragm. Up to today, I do not know exactly how to activate it, but it automatically comes about. Whenever I have a microphone, suddenly I'll just sound different. When it's just like that. I don't know how. I mean, I can tell people the theory behind it, like, oh, it should come from the diaphragm and all. But if you want me to do it right now, I don't know how to. But just take a microphone and it automatically changes. Yeah, I mean, look, it's all whether in a recording booth or in a radio studio, it's all a performance, and we learn the craft, how to properly hone your voice, how to project it in such a way. Yeah, I'm not one of those blessed ones where they sound the same in real life as in on air. So unfortunately, I'm not one of them. I like to think that it's pretty close. Just maybe on air it's a little bit more measured. But yeah, we put on that performance, we do the show, we still stay true to our character. But it's just that the voice, it's probably like crafted in a better way that hopefully best appeals to people.
I obviously relate. So it's a part of who we are, but we just kind of escalate it to another level depending on the medium that we're on. Going back to when we started this conversation about how you said, you were in a place where you were waking up and you were looking for, like your voice, your purpose. And I relate so much to that, because I feel part of what we do, when we reach a certain point, it's like, what's the value that we give back? And this is partly why I created this conversation, is because I felt that um, there are parts of people who are friends and colleagues in the industry where people don't see that at the end of the day we're just human, and at the same time we have conversations just like everyone else, despite what they might see or hear on the radio or on TV. So and you're right, like it really questions like, okay, well, like I want to wake up and be able to feel fulfilled as to what I'm giving back or what I can give. Yeah.
I think it's like I remember what I studied in school. There's this the Maslow's hierarchy of needs,
Mm,
and top is self-actualization. And I think I went through the whole process. I mean, all I have ever wanted to do was to be a radio presenter, right from young, when I was first exposed to music and the entertainment and media industry. I knew that, okay, I want to be a radio personality. I wanted to be a radio presenter, and I had that drive when I first got onto radio. I looked forward to the moment where I could go on air, turn on the mic, and talk to my listeners and interact with them, get them to SMS in, call in, and chat with them, and do up a good show. I really enjoyed that. When I went over to Football Channel as well, I still look forward, to doing the show and meeting your viewers and all that. I really was driven by that. That was my main source of motivation. But then came a day where you just suddenly like it almost seemed meaningless what you're doing day in day out. You just go, you do the show. Suddenly, it just doesn't have the same lure that you used to have, and then start questioning like, what are you really doing? And like what you correctly pointed out, you ask yourself like the difference that you're making. Uh, and I guess at that point, I thought, no, it now seems like it's just another job. And then that's when I started trying to find back this sense of purpose. And I think that's important. It worked back then when I was first starting out, but it kind of got lost. And I think it's only natural. And then you find it back again in something else that you do.
yeah, it's a journey and it's a process. Um, Thank you so much for having this conversation with me.
No problem. Love it, man. Love catching up with you. It's been too long.
All right, you take care, and we shall
Yep.
catch up soon again.
Well, we will.